The morning rush at Rosewood Café had finally ebbed when Jennifer Martinez wiped down the small corner table for the third time. Her hands shook as she checked her phone. 10:47 a.m. 17 minutes late. She smoothed the simple blue dress she'd borrowed from her sister, the only thing in her closet that still made her feel pretty, and tried to ignore the sympathetic looks from the barista who'd watched her sit alone for nearly half an hour. Mia, her 6-year-old daughter, was at her mother's house for the day. It had taken weeks of schedule juggling to make that happen. This was supposed to be her chance. Her first date since the divorce 2 years ago. Marcus from the accounting firm had seemed different. Kind. Steady. They'd matched online and talked for 3 weeks. He'd listened when she told him she was a single mother working 2 jobs. He'd called her brave for starting over. Now her cappuccino sat in front of her untouched and cooling, a little foam heart collapsing at the edges. Her phone buzzed at last. One new text. Sorry, this isn't going to work out. Good luck with everything. Jennifer stared at the words until they blurred. Good luck with everything. As if she were a case file. A charity. A problem to be wished well and forgotten. She swallowed hard and blinked fast. She would not cry in a cafe. Not again. She had done enough crying when her ex-husband left her for his 23-year-old assistant, when she'd given up their 4-bedroom house for a cramped apartment, when she'd missed Mia's school play because the clinic had called and she couldn't afford to say no. The bell over the cafe door chimed. Reflexively, she glanced up, then immediately looked away. A man had walked in, tall, in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Dark hair with a touch of gray at the temples. Strong features. Tired eyes. For small boys trailed him like unruly ducklings, all in matching navy sweaters and khaki pants. Quadruplets by the look of them. 4 identical faces, all mischief and movement. Boys. Inside voices, the man said quietly. The effect was immediate. The noise dropped, energy barely contained but reined in. He nodded toward the counter. Find a table while I order. They scattered toward a large booth near Jennifer's lonely corner table, bickering in urgent whispers about who got the window seat. Despite the ache in her chest, Jennifer felt her lips twitch. At least someone's morning was going well. Excuse me. A small voice piped up beside her. She turned. One of the boys stood next to her table, brown eyes wide and earnest. A stubborn cowlick refused to lie flat at the crown of his head, and there was a small gap between his front teeth. Hi there, Jennifer said softly, grateful for any distraction. What's up? You look sad, he said with the blunt honesty of a 4-year-old. Are you okay? Before she could answer, his father appeared, resting a hand lightly on the boy's shoulder. Liam, what did I say about bothering people? I wasn't bothering her, Dad. She looks sad. We should help. He gazed up at his father, completely serious. Something in Jennifer's chest squeezed. The man's eyes met hers. Embarrassment flickered across his face. I'm sorry, he said. They're still working on personal boundaries. It's fine, Jennifer said quickly, and realized she meant it. Be sweet. I'm not sweet, Liam corrected. I'm concerned. Miss Claire at school says you're supposed to check on people when they're upset. The father studied Jennifer a moment longer than politeness required. She had the odd sense he recognized something in her expression. Disappointment, maybe, or the weary acceptance that followed it. We're having hot chocolate, Liam announced. Do you want to sit with us? Dad always orders too many pastries. Liam, his father warned, though there was more fondness than reprimand in his tone. That's very kind, but I should probably, Jennifer began, already reaching for her purse. Please, another boy said, appearing at Liam's shoulder. Same brown eyes, but with a more solemn cast. Dad says it's good to make new friends. And you're alone. Heat flooded Jennifer's face. Was it that obvious? Could everyone in the cafe see she'd been stood up? That she was the sort of woman men walked away from without a second thought? Boys. Table. Now, their father said quietly. They obeyed, though they looked back over their shoulders, clearly reluctant. I really am sorry, he told Jennifer. They've been asking a lot of questions about why some people eat alone ever since their mother. He paused, pain tightening his jaw for a heartbeat. Since it's just been us. 6 months now. They're still adjusting. 6 months. She did the math. His wife had either died or left. Either way, she recognized the raw edge in his voice, the careful phrasing. She had danced around brutal truths in exactly the same way. I was stood up, Jennifer heard herself say. The confession surprised her as much as it seemed to surprise him. First date in 2 years and he didn't even cancel. Just sent a text after I'd already driven 40 minutes and paid for parking. The man's mouth thinned. Then he's an idiot. The simple certainty of it startled a laugh out of her. A real one, not the brittle sound she'd been faking for months. You don't even know me, she said. I know anyone who stands up someone brave enough to try again after 2 years doesn't deserve her time. He extended his hand. Christopher Bennett. And those 4 tornadoes are Liam, Noah, Lucas, and Caleb. I should apologize in advance for whichever one talks you into joining us, because they will not give up. His handshake was warm. His palm calloused in a way that didn't match the impeccable suit. Jennifer Martinez, she said. And I have a 6-year-old, so I speak fluent persistence. Then you already know resistance is futile. His smile completely changed his face, softened the lines of exhaustion, made him look younger, more approachable. We have chocolate croissants. I promise my sons are better company than whoever failed to show. At the booth, 4 small faces were pressed together, watching them with undisguised hope. Liam shot his father a clumsy thumbs up. Jennifer pictured going home to her quiet apartment, picking up Mia early and facing her mother's 2 careful questions. Adding this morning to the long, private list of reasons dating was more trouble than it was worth. Or she could spend an hour with 4 adorable boys and their unexpectedly kind father and salvage something from the wreck. Okay, she said, surprising herself again. But only if you tell me how you tell them apart. I'm already lost. Christopher's smile widened. Liam has the cowlick. Noah has a scar on his chin from a playground mishap. Lucas has a freckle on his left ear. Caleb always forgets to tie his left shoe. He gestured toward the booth. Come on. I'll make the introductions. As she followed him and watched the quadruplets frantically rearrange themselves to make space, Jennifer had no idea this chance invitation would strip apart everything she thought she knew about second chances, or that the man in the expensive suit carried secrets that would test every fragile hope beginning to wake in her bruised heart. The booth dissolved into organized chaos as Jennifer slid in beside Lucas, who immediately scooted closer to show her a small toy car. This one's my favorite, he said, holding up a red convertible. Dad says when we're big, he'll teach us all to drive. But we have to share one car 'cause 4 cars is too expensive. Jennifer glanced at Christopher, amused. I'm pretty sure your dad could afford 4 cars. Oh, he can, Liam said matter-of-factly. He's really rich. But he says just 'cause you have money doesn't mean you should waste it, and teenagers don't need fancy cars. Liam. Christopher ran a hand through his hair, half exasperated, half fond. We don't advertise people's bank accounts. But you always tell us not to lie, Noah said logically. And it's true. You are rich. Jennifer bit back a smile. There's a difference between lying and using discretion, Christopher said. What's discretion? Caleb asked around a mouthful of whipped cream. It means knowing when to keep your mouth shut, Christopher replied mildly. A skill all 4 of you are still learning. The barista arrived with a tray so loaded it sagged in the middle. 5 steaming mugs of hot chocolate, each crowned with whipped cream, plus an excessive spread of pastries, chocolate croissants, cinnamon rolls, blueberry muffins, and scones. We didn't know what you'd like, Liam explained, clearly feeling the need to justify the display. So Dad ordered everything. I did not order everything, Christopher protested. There are at least 6 items we didn't get. Jennifer laughed and realized the tight knot in her chest had finally begun to loosen. This is very generous, she said. You really didn't have to. Please, Christopher said softly. They insisted. Besides, watching them negotiate pastry distribution is my main entertainment these days. As if on cue, the boys launched into a loud, complicated debate about fair shares and crumb counts. Christopher intervened with the efficiency of a man who'd refereed 1,000 similar arguments. Okay, Each of you picks one now, he said. The rest go in the box for later. Everyone gets equal amounts. Deal. For small heads bobbed. Caleb tried to sneak an extra muffin anyway. Christopher caught his hand without even looking. So, Noah said once everyone had chosen, fixing Jennifer with his solemn gaze. Why didn't that mean man come to meet you? Noah, Christopher said quickly. That's not. It's all right, Jennifer cut in. She took a breath, considering how much to explain to a 4-year-old. Sometimes grown ups change their minds. And sometimes they handle it badly. It's rude, Liam declared. Miss Claire says if you make a promise you should do it, unless there's a real emergency. Miss Claire sounds very wise, Jennifer said. She's our teacher, Lucas explained. She has red hair and smells like cookies and never yells, even when Noah spilled paint all over the reading corner. It was an accident, Noah muttered. The jar was slippery. Over their heads, Christopher caught Jennifer's eye and gave a small wry smile. The way he watched his sons, attentive, amused, gentle, made her stomach flutter in a way she tried to ignore. Do you have kids? Caleb asked, licking a ring of chocolate from his upper lip. Ido. A daughter. Mia. She's 6. That's older than us, Liam said. Does she go to school? 1st grade. She loves reading and drawing. And horses. She's never actually ridden one, but that hasn't stopped the obsession. We went horseback riding once, Noah said. Lucas fell off. I didn't fall, Lucas insisted. The horse stopped too fast and I slid. There's a difference. You still got dirt on your face, Caleb pointed out cheerfully. Jennifer found herself talking about Mia, how she wanted to be a veterinarian but was still scared of the neighbor's cat. The boys listened closely, chiming in with their own stories. The conversation flowed easily, the way it sometimes did between strangers whose lives had run along parallel lines of grief and exhaustion. What do you do? Christopher asked during a lull while the boys concentrated on their pastries. For work. I'm a nurse, Jennifer said. Pediatric ICU during the week. I pick up shifts at a clinic on weekends when I can. Something shifted in his expression. Respect and maybe a different kind of understanding. That's a lot, he said. It is, she admitted. But it's also worth it. And it pays the bills. Mostly. She hadn't meant to tack on that last word. Slipped out heavy with fatigue. Mostly, Christopher repeated, his tone careful. Heat crept up her neck. This was where people usually started to pity her. To offer well-meant suggestions or awkward charity. I shouldn't have said that, she murmured. It's not your problem. I wasn't suggesting it was, he said quietly. I was thinking the healthcare system is broken if people like you have to work 2 jobs to survive. Before she could answer, Liam tugged on her sleeve. Do you save kids' lives? He asked, eyes huge. I help keep very sick kids alive, she said. It's a team effort. 4 pairs of eyes stared at her like she just announced she could fly. That's like a superhero, Noah breathed. Not exactly, Jennifer said, laughing. No cape. No magic. Just a lot of hard work. Dad says real heroes don't need capes, Caleb said. He says they're regular people who help others even when it's hard. Jennifer met Christopher's gaze again, and this time she didn't pretend the flicker in her chest was anything but attraction. She looked away quickly, reminding herself. She'd been stood up that morning. She barely knew this man. Getting drunk on his kindness would only make the crash worse later. We should probably let you enjoy the rest of your day, Christopher said, though he made no move to end things. I'm sure you have plans more exciting than being interrogated by 4 preschoolers. Honestly, Jennifer said, this has been the best part of my week. We rescued you, Liam said proudly. You absolutely did, she agreed, ruffling his hair. She slid to the edge of the booth. Christopher reached for his phone. Would it be too forward if I asked for your number? He said. Her heart lurched. Why? Because if I don't, those 4 will ask about you every day for the next month, he said. And because, he hesitated. When he looked at her, some of the polished confidence fell away. Because I'd like to see you again. Maybe for coffee we actually plan this time. The rational part of Jennifer's mind surged up with warnings. She knew nothing about Christopher beyond what she could see. A devoted father, an expensive suit, a gentle voice. Men like him didn't belong in her world. She'd just been rejected. She should not be handing out her phone number on the same day. But there was another part of her, quieter and stubborn, that remembered the sound of her own real laughter for the first time in months. "Okay," she said. His whole face lit up. Her fingers shook slightly as she typed her number into his phone. The boys cheered like they just won a championship. She couldn't help grinning. What she didn't know, what Christopher deliberately didn't mention, was that he recognized her name from the hospital where his company's foundation donated millions each year. That he was already wondering why a skilled pediatric ICU nurse needed 2 jobs. Or that the past 6 months of his life had been swallowed by a corporate war he was rapidly losing. A war that would pull Jennifer into a world of power plays and family betrayal she never imagined. 3 weeks after that morning at Rosewood Café, Jennifer's life looked different enough that she sometimes wondered when she'd slipped into someone else's story. Christopher had called that same evening. Not texted, called. She'd folded laundry in her small living room while they talked for 2 hours. He'd told her stories about the Quadruplets' antics, listened to her describe her shifts, asked about Mia like her answers actually mattered. Their first official date had been at a quiet Italian place where he'd arrived 15 minutes early and stood when she walked in. He'd watched her like she was the only person in the room. Their second date had been chaos in the best way. An afternoon at the Children's Museum with all 5 kids, ending with ice cream smeared across faces and clothes. Mia and the boys had bonded instantly, forming a sticky-fingered alliance that left both adults exhausted and slightly dazed. Now, Jennifer stood in the gleaming lobby of Bennett Tower and tried not to gape. The building speared 40 stories into the downtown skyline. All glass and steel, Bennett Global Investments emblazoned across the top. Christopher had invited her to lunch at his office, mentioning casually that he needed to discuss something important. "Ms. Martinez?" A young woman in a pristine suit approached, tablet in hand. "Mr. Bennett is expecting you. This way." In the elevator to the 38th floor, Jennifer smoothed her scrub top, suddenly conscious of how out of place she looked. She'd come straight from a shift at the ICU. The polished floors and modern art made her feel like she'd stepped into a different planet. The elevator doors opened. Christopher was waiting just outside, leaning against the wall. His face softened the instant he saw her. "You came," he said, as if her presence weren't a given. "You said it was important," she replied. He took her hand as they walked through the open-plan office. People pretended not to stare. His office looked like something out of a movie. Floor-to-ceiling windows and enormous desk, sleek furniture. But what drew her eye was the far wall, covered in children's drawings taped haphazardly in bright crayon colors. Each was signed in wobbly letters. Liam, Noah, Lucas, Caleb. "I need to tell you something," Christopher said once the door was closed. The seriousness in his voice made anxiety twist low in her stomach. "Okay," she said, taking the chair he indicated. "You're scaring me a little." He sat across from her. The exhaustion she'd glimpsed in the cafe was more pronounced now, etched into the lines around his mouth and eyes. "My company is in trouble," he said. "Has been really since my wife died." Jennifer went very still. "Caroline owned the majority of Bennett Global through her family's trust," Christopher continued. "When she died, control should have come to me. That's what our marriage agreement said. But her brother, David Westbrook, is contesting it." "Can he?" Jennifer asked, frowning. "He can make it miserable," Christopher said. "David's claiming that because Caroline died in a car accident and I was driving, I shouldn't inherit. He's implying negligence, hinting there might be grounds for criminal liability, even though the police investigation cleared me completely." His voice went rough. "A drunk driver blew through a red light. There was nothing I could have done." Without thinking, Jennifer reached across the desk and covered his hand with hers. "I'm so sorry," she said. "The boys were home with the nanny. Caroline and I were coming back from a charity gala," he said quietly. "One minute we were arguing about whether Lucas needs glasses. The next," his jaw worked. "The next I was waking up in a hospital bed, and she was gone." Jennifer tightened her grip. She pictured the 4 boys she'd come to adore. The idea of them losing their mother, of this man waking up alone, made her chest ache. David wants control of the company, Christopher said. He's been whispering to board members, telling them I'm unstable, that I can't run Bennett Global and raise 4 kids. He's offered to buy my stake for a fraction of what it's worth. If I refuse, he'll drag it through court for years. My lawyer thinks I'll win eventually, but it could take 2 years and millions in legal fees. In the meantime, investors are nervous. We've already lost 3 major clients. He met her gaze. I'm telling you this because it's about to get uglier. There's a board meeting next week where David's going to make his move. And I need you to understand what you'd be walking into if you keep seeing me. Why would it affect me? Jennifer asked. Because David has private investigators digging into everything I do, Christopher said. They've already photographed us. You and Mia will be scrutinized. Reporters might call. People might show up at your work. At your apartment. I wouldn't blame you if you decided you didn't want that for yourself or your daughter. For a long moment Jennifer said nothing. This corporate warfare, tabloids, lawyers, was exactly the kind of drama she'd sworn never to invite into her life again. She had Mia to protect. 2 jobs. No safety net. The rational choice was obvious. Thank him for his honesty, walk away, and retreat to the smaller life she knew how to manage. But she thought about Liam's crooked grin. About 4 little boys calling to say goodnight to Mia over video. About the way Christopher had noticed her check engine light and quietly arranged for his mechanic to fix her car, refusing to let her pay. About how he'd held her while she cried over missing Mia's school concert because of a last-minute shift, and how he'd shown up at the school anyway, phone in hand, so she could watch live from the hospital break room. What do you need? She asked. Christopher blinked. What? What do you need from me? How can I help? Jennifer, you don't have to. I know I don't have to, she said. I'm asking. Something in his face cracked. Behind the CEO polish, she saw the bone-deep fear and fatigue. I need someone who sees me, he said slowly. Not the money. Not the headline. Just me. Someone who doesn't want anything from me. Someone who... His voice caught and he looked away. Someone who reminds me what it feels like to be happy. Jennifer came around the desk, and pulled him to his feet. He folded into her arms like a man finally allowing himself to lean. We'll figure it out, she said into his shoulder. Whatever happens in that boardroom, we'll handle it. Neither of them knew that 3 floors below, in a glass-walled conference room, David Westbrook was already arranging the final pieces of his trap. He'd had Jennifer investigated. He knew about her ex-husband's debts, about funds missing from his former employer, about embezzlement allegations that had never stuck, but had shadowed Jennifer for 2 years. David was preparing to present a neat, poisonous story. Jennifer as a gold digger, possibly complicit in her ex-husband's crimes, using Christopher for access to his fortune. Christopher's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at the screen and went pale. What is it? Jennifer asked. David's called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow, Christopher said. He's moving faster than we thought. He looked at her torn. Jennifer, you should distance yourself. Whatever he's planning. The door burst open. Patricia Cole, his lawyer, strode in, tablet in hand, her expression grim. We have a problem, she said. David's leaked documents to the press claiming, you've been misusing company funds to support a new relationship. They're running the story in tomorrow's business section. He names Jennifer. Jennifer felt the blood drain from her face. What? That's ridiculous. Christopher hasn't given me anything except the mechanic who fixed your car, Patricia said briskly. Christopher's personal mechanic. Paid through a company account. The children's museum tickets? Corporate card. Flowers he had his assistant send to your hospital last week? Also corporate. It's all documented. It creates a pattern. Company resources used to cultivate a romantic relationship. Those are normal expenses, Christopher snapped. I'm allowed to use my corporate card. Not when your brother-in-law is arguing you're unfit and making reckless, emotionally driven decisions, Patricia said. Not when he can spin it as you choosing your love life over your fiduciary duty. Jennifer stepped back dizzy. She hadn't realized how easily kindness could be twisted into evidence. I'll make a statement, she said. Tell the press the truth. That we're just dating. That Christopher hasn't. That's exactly what David wants, Patricia cut in. He wants you flustered and defensive. It feeds his narrative. Christopher pulled Jennifer back to his side, arm coming around her shoulders. Then we give him something else, he said quietly. We stop playing defense. Patricia studied him. What are you proposing? A counterattack, Christopher said. David wants a war? Fine. He can have one. He turned to Jennifer. But if we do this, there's no going back. Are you sure you still want any part of this? Fear jolted through her. She thought of Mia, her tiny apartment, the safe, small future she could go back to. Then she thought of 4 boys who'd already lost one parent, of the man holding her, who had been transparent about his worst moments when he could have hidden them. I'm sure, she said. What's the plan? The Bennett Global boardroom was built to impress and intimidate. An endless mahogany table, high-backed leather chairs, and walls lined with oil portraits of long-dead founders. Jennifer sat at Christopher's right hand, acutely aware of the 18 board members watching her. She'd traded her scrubs for the one professional suit she owned, a simple gray her sister had helped her find on clearance. Her palms were damp, but her spine stayed straight. At the far end of the table, David Westbrook looked like the glossy magazine version of success. Bespoke navy suit, flawless haircut, the kind of taut fitness personal trainers cultivated. His expression was cool, bordering on smug. Beside him sat his lawyer and 2 board members Christopher had identified as likely allies. Let's begin, said Harold Peterson, the elderly board chair. His voice held the weight of someone who'd seen too many corporate wars. David, you called this meeting. The floor is yours. David rose smoothly. Thank you, Harold. I'll be brief. He wasn't. As you all know, my sister Caroline's death 6 months ago was a devastating loss, he began. For our family and for this company. Since then, I've watched my brother-in-law struggle under the weight of grief and responsibility. Unfortunately, his recent decisions have raised serious concerns about his fitness to lead. That's absurd, Christopher said evenly. Our third-quarter earnings were up 14%. Thanks to initiatives Caroline launched before her death, David countered. Since then, we've lost 3 major clients. Several institutional investors have quietly reduced their positions. And now, he opened a folder with a practiced flourish. We have evidence that Christopher has begun using company resources to fund a personal relationship with a woman he barely knows. A woman whose ex-husband is under investigation for embezzlement. A murmur rippled around the table. Jennifer felt every gaze land on her like a physical weight. She forced herself not to shrink. My ex-husband's alleged crimes have nothing to do with me, she said, her voice steady. I was never charged because I didn't do anything wrong. Yet you benefited, David said smoothly. The house you lived in, the car you drove, the lifestyle you enjoyed. It was all paid for with stolen funds. The house was foreclosed, Jennifer shot back. The car was repossessed. I've spent 2 years working double shifts to rebuild from nothing. Don't pretend you know anything about my life because you paid someone to dig through my trash. This is character assassination, Christopher said, standing. And it has nothing to do with my performance as CEO. It has everything to do with your judgment, David replied. You met this woman 3 weeks ago in a cafe. 3 weeks, Christopher. And you've already entangled her in company affairs, brought her to a board meeting, used her to project an image of domestic stability. What happens when the media digs into her past? When they discover you're involved with someone tied to financial crimes? How does that look to our investors? Mr. Westbrook, Patricia said, rising. Ms. Martinez is not on trial. Her personal history is irrelevant. I disagree, said a woman midway down the table. Victoria Chun, one of the more influential board members. Her gaze was sharp. If Christopher's judgment is compromised, it's very much our concern. We have a duty to our shareholders. Then let's talk about judgment, Christopher said. He reached for his own folder and handed copies down both sides of the table. What David isn't telling you, he said, is that while I've been building this company and raising 4 boys, he's been quietly sabotaging us. He nodded to Patricia, who spoke with crisp precision. These documents show a pattern of Mr. Westbrook meeting with executives at rival firms, sharing non-public information about our clients, and attempting to recruit key Bennett Global staff. Page 4 is especially instructive. David, you were particularly indiscreet at the Harrison merger celebration. I was networking, David snapped. It's what professionals do. There's a difference between networking and selling out your own firm, Christopher said. As for this supposed misuse of funds, let's be specific. He ticked items off on his fingers. The mechanic who repaired Jennifer's car has been under contract with Bennett Global for 8 years. He services company vehicles as well as mine personally. The Children's Museum? I took 5 children, my sons and Jennifer's daughter. Or should I have left them home alone? His voice sharpened. And the flowers sent to the hospital where Jennifer works? That's the same hospital where the Bennett Foundation has donated $12 million over the past 5 years. The same hospital where Caroline volunteered every Thursday. A few heads turned in David's direction. What David is right about, Christopher continued, is that I met Jennifer at a cafe 3 weeks ago. She didn't know who I was. She wasn't impressed by the suit or the building. She liked my kids. He glanced briefly at Jennifer. And they liked her. He turned back to the board. What he's wrong about is my mental fitness. I grieved my wife. I am still grieving her. But I have also kept this company stable during the worst period of my life. David doesn't want what's best for Bennett Global. He wants what Caroline never trusted him with, control. How dare you, David hissed. Caroline was my sister. I loved her. Then honor her, Christopher said softly but with steel. Stop trying to dismantle what she built. Because you're angry she chose someone else to share it with. She made me her partner at home and here. You never forgave her for that. David's face darkened. This isn't over. Actually, Harold said, pushing back his chair. It is. At least for today. He looked around the table. We've heard accusations and rebuttals. We've also seen credible evidence that Mr. Westbrook may have acted against Bennett Global's interests. I propose a formal investigation into his dealings with competitors. In the meantime, Christopher retains full operational control. All in favor? He asked. Hands went up around the table. When the tally was done, the vote stood at 14-4. David's allies had melted away. As the meeting broke up, David stalked down the length of the table toward them, rage barely leashed. You think you've won? He said to Christopher. His gaze slid to Jennifer, dripping contempt. This woman will ruin you. People like her always do. They see dollar signs and... Stop, Christopher said quietly. The force in his voice made David actually pause. Jennifer has had every reason to walk away from this mess, Christopher said. She hasn't. She stayed for me and for 4 boys who miss their mother. She is braver and more loyal than you could possibly understand. Now get out of my building. For a moment, David looked like he might say more. Then he spun on his heel and strode out, his lawyer scrambling to keep up. Only when the door swung shut did Jennifer let out the breath she'd been holding. That was terrifying, she admitted. You were incredible, Christopher said, pulling her into his arms. The way you stood up to him. I was shaking the whole time, she said into his chest. So was I, he murmured, kissing her hair. Thank you for not running. The months that followed were not easy, but they were slowly better. The board's investigation into David uncovered enough questionable behavior that he resigned under pressure. He sold his shares and moved to California. Bennett Global's stock price stabilized, then rose. Christopher finalized a major partnership he and Caroline had begun negotiating before her death. More important to Jennifer, life at home wove itself into a new pattern. Mia and the Quadruplets became inseparable. They treated her like an adored little sister. She ruled them like a benevolent tyrant. Jennifer's 2-bedroom apartment soon proved too small for 5 children and 2 exhausted adults. When Christopher suggested, hesitantly, that she and Mia move into his house, with its sprawling backyard and enough bedrooms for everyone, she'd said yes. It wasn't seamless. There were nights when Jennifer lay awake, acutely aware of the gap between her past and Christopher's world of fundraisers and strategy meetings. Times when she felt out of place beside his polished colleagues. Afternoons when 5 children melted down at once and she wondered what on earth she'd been thinking. But there were also mornings filled with laughter echoing off the kitchen walls, evenings spent around a crowded table, and quiet moments when Christopher would catch her alone, pull her close, and tell her she'd saved him as much as he'd saved her. 1 year after that awful morning at Rosewood Café, Christopher took Jennifer back to where it had all begun. They sat in the same corner booth. Mia and the boys were with Jennifer's mother, leaving them a rare evening with no spilled drinks or emergency bathroom trips. "I've been thinking about that day," Christopher said, his fingers laced with hers across the table. "About how close I came to just grabbing coffee and going back to the office." "You almost said no?" she asked. "The boys wanted pastries," he said. "I was stressed about work. About David. I nearly told them we didn't have time." "I'm glad you didn't," Jennifer said quietly. "So am I." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. For a heartbeat, the cafe noise faded into a dull hum. "I know it's only been a year," he said. "I know some people will say it's too soon or too fast. But Jennifer, you walked into my life when I'd forgotten what happiness felt like. You stood beside me when you had every reason to run. You love my sons like your own, and they love you and Mia with everything they have." His voice thickened. "I don't want to waste time pretending I need more proof," he said. "I know. I've known for a while. You're it for me." He opened the box. A simple, elegant diamond caught the cafe lights. "Will you marry me?" Tears blurred Jennifer's vision as a laugh escaped her. The enormity of the moment and the absurdity that it had all begun with a terrible text message collided inside her chest. "Yes," she managed. "Yes. Absolutely yes." Applause broke out around them. She realized belatedly that several staff members had been watching from behind the counter, people who remembered the sad woman who'd been stood up a year ago and the man who'd walked in with 4 identical boys. Christopher slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her. For the first time in a long time, she didn't worry about who might be watching. Later, the celebration at home was even louder. The Quadruplets launched themselves onto the furniture, chanting something that sounded like a victory song. Mia burst into happy tears. Everyone talked at once. They ordered pizza and ice cream. Bedtime became a distant concept. The 6 of them ended up piled together in the living room, planning a future filled with messy schedules, shared holidays, and a house that would never be quiet again. At some point, as the kids argued over wedding cake flavors, Jennifer thought of Marcus, the man who'd sent good luck with everything and never looked back. She hoped he'd found whatever he was chasing, but she was grateful deeply, fiercely, that he hadn't shown up that day. His absence had carved out space for something she never would have dared to wish for. A second chance at love, a family that chose one another, and a happiness so complete it sometimes stole her breath. That night, as she tucked Mia into bed, her daughter wrapped her arms around Jennifer's neck. "I'm glad that mean man didn't come to the cafe, Mommy," Mia whispered. "'Cause then we wouldn't have our new family." "Me too, baby," Jennifer said, kissing her forehead. "Me too." And she meant it with every fiber of her being.